And we are live. How's everybody doing today? It's another episode of the American Cholo podcast. Ooh, I didn't mean to hit that one. Broadcasting live and directly from North Hollywood, California. My name is Gil. I am the American Cholo. And today is getting close to Political Tuesday, man. Where we got to vote. We got to get a new mayor, get a new governor, get a new this, get a new that, get some new policies, or maybe we won't. Or maybe we'll get some of the same stuff. But there's only one way we can do it, and that's by voting and getting involved. And today I actually got a special panel for you guys from El Monte. It's a panel of leaders. It's a panel of councilmen, of people going, treasurers, people running for mayor, the whole shabam. Let's just get in here. Let me bring them into you one at a time. All right, look at this. There's one, there's two, there's three, four, five, six, and seven. How's everybody doing tonight?
Wow. Very good.
We're all good. Good.
Okay, so let's start first with Dr. Maria Morales, and then after that, we'll just swing around the table, Maria. So go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Dr. Maria Morales, and I am running for mayor of the city of El Monte. I've been a council member for 4 years, and I'm looking forward to serving my community in a different capacity, but doing just as much work, if not more. So, yes, I'm the candidate for mayor in the city of El Monte.
Very cool. Now, Joaquina?
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Joaquina Quiñones. I'm the candidate running for El Monte City Council District 3. And the beautiful thing about this election in our city is that our city has been redistricted, meaning that in each district, the voters will have the ability to vote and select the council member that's going to represent them in City Hall. As I mentioned, my name is Joaquina Quiñones, and I'm your candidate running for District 3 here in El Monte.
Perfect. Viviana, your turn.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Viviana Longoria. I am currently the city treasurer of El Monte, and I'm humbly asking you for your vote once again to serve another 4 years. A little bit about myself. I grew up here in El Monte my entire life. I raised all of my children here in El Monte. My grandson now is being raised here as well. I would love to serve another 4 years. I believe that I'm the candidate that you can count on for transparency and accountability. So please, I'm asking for your vote this tomorrow, November 8th.
Tomorrow. Mr.
Yes.
Richard.
Hey, good evening. My name is Richard Rojo. I'm running for District 5 City Council, and I believe I can make a difference. In fact, I know I can make a difference with the 42 and a half years of legal experience I had behind me. It's been a journey so far. I'm new at this. I've never run for politics. At the age of 68, I threw in my hat, and there's no regrets, no reservations, and I'm looking forward to serving my city, El Monte.
No regrets as of yet, Richard.
At least as of yet.
Okay, who we got next? Marisol.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Marisol Cortez, and I'm also from El Monte. My family raised myself and my 6 siblings here, so I'm very connected to Almani. I just want to give back to the city that I was raised in. I think with my experience, my education, and my willingness to learn and help others in our community, residents, business owners, and really help the District 6 residents. Like Joaquina mentioned, the great thing about our current election is that we are redistricted. So we feel a connection to our residents because we grew up here and we know our areas very well. So I look forward to serving the community with this great, amazing team that I'm part of. And I also want to thank you for the opportunity to letting us be on here live and say our story. And please, everyone has to go vote tomorrow, November 8th.
Absolutely. Thank you. Mr. Councilman Martin, talk to us.
Good evening. Hello, everybody. I'm Martin. I'm the current council member here in the city of El Monte. I've been on the council now for almost 2 years. It's a couple of months shy of 2 years, and it's been a wonderful opportunity. I recognize that not very many people get this chance, and so I'm very grateful. I feel very blessed to have this opportunity, and I'm excited about seeking another term, another 4 years. We have some important work to do. A couple of my colleagues just mentioned, or the couple of candidates just mentioned about the districts now, which is new in Almani. For the first time, we are going to have candidates that are elected by residents who live, in close proximity to their representatives. Someone who's going to know the issues because they share these issues, and so that's very exciting to me. Dr. Morales and I worked hard to make that happen because we recognize that would create geographic equity. for our community. And so now we're eager to continue moving forward with this process and improving and increasing our civic participation. So I'll echo my friend's sentiments here. Don't forget to vote tomorrow.
That's right. So the district part in El Monte, how big is the city of El Monte as far as population goes, and how big are the districts now? They're broken down to, and how many different districts are there? And I'll let you or Maria take this one.
I'll go ahead and answer that. So there's 6 districts that are now representing the geographic locations in El Monte. So historically, council members and mayors have been elected from certain areas in the community. And so now, because of districting, then the entire city geographically now is going to have a representative, a council member. And so then that is going to be equal participation, equal representation of all areas in the community. So we have 6. The mayor is at large, but part of this idea really came from the state of California through the Voting Rights Act to make sure that every member, every constituent in the community is represented, and not only certain areas of the city and certain populations, but in this way, everyone and all of their voices are going to be equally heard.
Okay. Now, Viviana, you're current treasurer of El Monte, right?
Correct.
Okay. Now, what does a treasurer do for the city, actually?
So what my position entails is overseeing our budget. I oversee our bills, that they're getting paid on time, that the proper funds are being used for the proper projects. And so that's pretty much the responsibility that I have. So I support our finance department, and so I'm actually more of an oversight of the bills that we're paying. So I'm technically about the third, fourth person that gets to see all of our bills. Just making sure that there's no fraud going on with the bills that we're paying, making sure we're fiscally responsible.
Now, when you say physically responsible, is there anything that the prior administration has done that you kind of push back on?
Actually, our the previous administration actually brought in cannabis, and that actually helped our budget. It actually helped our finances because we're actually able to allocate those funds for safety, for parks and rec. So it actually helped our finances.
Okay, now let me ask Joaquina, what's your take on the cannabis coming to El Monte and starting to set up shop?
Well, let's be honest, it creates revenue for our city, and that revenue gets invested back into our community. So you're talking about these public works programs that have not been implemented for years. Now, all of a sudden, they're being implemented, and it benefits our community, our children. A lot of those funds do get allocated to our police department. And what is the biggest priority here in our city? Safety. So I am definitely in favor of bringing that revenue that's going to benefit everyone here in our city.
Okay, how about you, Richard? What do you think about this?
Well, definitely. You mean about cannabis?
About cannabis, about
Yeah.
smoking weed.
Smoking weed. Nothing against it personally. However, I echo and I support what Joaquina just said. We definitely need an infusion of revenue. I see down the streets on Garvey empty lots on both sides. That sort of blight not only dismays me, but it's somewhat shocking that these lots have remained just clear and nothing's being done about it. And I think cannabis is an avenue we can take to increase revenue and have that infusion necessary for improvement in our city.
Okay, now I got another follow-up with you, Richard. Not that you're not a very handsome fox older gentleman, right? But why, at your age, do you really want to deal with the headaches of getting involved in politics?
Excellent question, and I'll tell you why. After living in El Monte for so many years and not seeing improvement, I thought that simply bemoaning the situation wasn't sufficient. Simply complaining wouldn't suffice. And I decided to make something of it and be proactive about it. And when I met Dr. Morales, she really did encourage me. She was the accelerator to where I'm at now, and I am very motivated to make a difference. And doing nothing to me was just not going to happen. So yes, I threw in my hat, you might say, at this late stage because I got tired of waiting and I wanted to do something about it proactively.
Right on, man. Great answer. Marisol, what is your take on the cannabis industry moving into El Monte the way it is?
I also agree with Joaquin and Richard. We need to find revenue sources. And if this is one of the resources that the city could bring, you know, permits, process, et cetera, then why not? Because we do need extra funding for certain programs in our city. I think we need to welcome more economic development. Like Richard mentioned, there are empty lots. There are potential business opportunities that are being missed out if we don't invite those opportunities here so we could have more revenues without increasing, the tax rates for our residents. We should be having economic development bring in those resources to write programs, especially public safety. That's a big thing that we all advocate for in Almani. And I think it's a great opportunity for the city to bring more resources.
Now, let me get to, I'm sorry, here, Councilman Martin. So you're in the councilman, you and the soon-to-be mayor up there, Maria. Um, is there any cons to legalizing cannabis? Because how much of an effect is it actually doing to your city? Are they starting to open up shops there? Is that what you guys are bringing in over there?
Well, we have several options. I think, at first embraced, and Dr. Morales could probably correct me here if I'm wrong, because this was something that actually predates my being on council. But manufacturing first came into the city of El Monte. We then moved to have retail operations in El Monte, and we have it currently capped at 6 licenses. So we cannot go past 6 without approval of our voters. And so I think for some people who might be concerned about the further proliferation of retail in our city, it's not going to happen without their permission. So that's off the table for now. But their income, right now we have 3 of the 6 operating. And correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Morales, but I think in this last quarter we had about $400,000 of revenue from that industry. And that's only 3 of the 6 operating, and that was a quarter. So we're expecting a big impact to pay some bills, to increase our public safety program, that is adding officers, improving our parks and rec programs, which is very important on the front end of trying to reduce crime by giving activity for our youth to do, and educational programs too. So
now, Viviana, as far as the marijuana industry, does that give you guys somewhat of a problem financially because some of this money can't go into certain banks or stuff like that? Or how do you guys deal with the revenue? They give you guys in checks, in cash? How do you guys get that money?
We get that money. That money is placed in a fund, and that specific fund is to be used only for what was specified when that revenue or the cannabis was approved.
Okay. Now, Joaquina, what kind of pushback, or do you guys get any pushback for that, for trying to be like one of the forefronts in the cannabis industry in your city? What kind of pushback do you guys get from certain residents?
Well, definitely the biggest priority is safety. They associate, these cannabis retailers with crime, and they think that that crime happens outside of these retail stores, which currently till today there is no correlation between that. So definitely there is that pushback there because unfortunately other candidates have said that cannabis has contributed to our crime here in our city.
Right. Now, Maria, would you guys ever be inclined to maybe having, and this because I want to go there, like a coffee shop type place where you can come sit down, drink a coffee? Because I listen, I do cannabis, right? More for just instead of taking depression pills, I'll smoke a joint every weekend or whatnot, right? And I would love to sit there and be able to go to like either a restaurant or a coffee shop and be able to light me up. They come with a menu, give me a
it's
joint.
for your glaucoma.
Yeah, there you go. You see. Drink some coffee. Would you guys ever be inclined to actually be some of that? Because then you guys would really be in the forefront of this cannabis thing, and there's big money out there.
Oh yeah, I think there's absolutely a lot of money to be made with respect to this type of industry. However, based on the way the licenses have been distributed and the purposes for the licenses are essentially regulated. And what the community has essentially provided is the 6 licenses for retail and for cultivation only, and not necessarily for cannabis type uh, of whether it's like a sit down space or
Right.
anything. That's we don't have that capacity to do it. I do have to say that in the last quarter, and actually by the end of January, we're going to get another infusion of tax revenue for Measure PC, which essentially we placed it on the ballot a couple years ago, where the community overwhelmingly, about 75% of the community said that this revenue that was going to derive from cannabis was going to be used specifically for public safety, for parks and recreation, as it's already been mentioned, for youth programs, after school programs. And so we wanted to make sure that we targeted specifically because at the end of the day, we want this to be an opportunity for us to support some of the needs that we just haven't been able to. And to go back to what was said earlier, it's about bringing in additional revenue so that we're not just focused on one particular revenue source, where before El Monte essentially was dependent on the auto car industry. And back in 2008, that recession really had an impact on us because we were not diversified and we were just focused on specific tax revenue that was coming from the auto industry. So this has, again, diversified, has given us a little bit more revenue. We're probably closer to the $500,000 now, but it was estimated that we would generate close to $2 million a year in just tax revenue. Yeah, so there's definitely a lot of opportunity. And if there is a recession that is going to occur, as oftentimes it's said, then this is going to give us another opportunity of kind of set aside funds so that for a rainy day we can tap into those resources as well.
Okay, back to the treasurer, Viviana. Is there any like safe mechanisms that will make sure that the money coming from the cannabis industry is being used for that? Now, is that where you come to play and say, "Hey, man, you guys are using this for something else"?
That's my job. So I get to oversee all the the financials. I do this on a weekly basis. So if there is a check that is being paid out of the funds that it's not supposed to be, then that's where I come in and I place a stop on that, and we look into it further. I will say that our finance department has won many awards, and like I mentioned, they're a great team to work with, and I'm like, as I mentioned as well, that I'm like the third or fourth person that oversees these finances. So if the second or third person hasn't caught that, then more than likely I would be the one that catch it. But if somebody previously from myself sees it, it would automatically be stopped, and they would look into it further. It wouldn't be paid out.
Okay. And now, who's the one that's responsible for maybe trying to have a surplus for the city? Would that be in your department? Would that be in the mayor's department? Because I myself foresee a pretty good recession coming in 2023, and I'm trying to see if you guys have any kind of money put away for that.
We do have some money put away um, for the rainy day, and as mentioned before, like Maria's mentioned, the plan is to seek some kind of economic development to raise our revenue. But that's also our council responsibility to
It's
seek
Martin's
out
fault.
collaborations.
Okay, so now let me get to the political side more. Marisol, I am a constituent of yours. I'm tired of calling this RV that's been outside my house every day for the last month. I'm tired of going to the city and say, "Hey, man, you guys need to get rid of this." What are you doing as a council person in Monte to try to help, minimize the homeless people out here?
So I would like to say that Monte has been doing a really good job of bringing resources, such as homeless shelters for the homeless issue that we do currently have. And also, if there's an issue, say, for example, the RV issue, we've been canvassing, and some of our residents are not aware of how they could report, say, trash, parking, any of those issues. There's currently an app, My El Monte app, that you can report these issues anonymously or report with your information. And I suggest to these residents, file the information, take pictures. If I'm your councilwoman, give me the information. I'll follow with that direct department. I think it's all about following up and communication. I know our city hall is busy. They have a ton of calls. I'm sure they have a ton of messages. So they will get to it. It's all about following up and making that connection and getting back to that resident. Especially if a resident tells me, I want to make sure I go back and say, was it taken care of?
Okay, Joaquina, same question to you, but this time I'm a business owner, and actually no, I got a different question for you. I'm a business owner, and there is somebody out there selling, fruit and all that in your vicinity of your store and all that, and I'm calling and telling you, hey, I want this guy off my block because I sell smoothies, he sells raspados, and I feel a certain way. How do you deal with that?
We've actually seen it firsthand, the tension between the business owners who are complaining that these taco stands are taking away their business. And what I would say is that we need to make sure, first and foremost, that the food out there is safe to consume. We want to be able to also collaborate with both entities and find, a balance. The city actually previously had hosted an event at what we know here, the Aquatic Center, which is where they allocated or they relocated, they reached out to these vendors and try to create events specifically for them where they could go ahead and sell, and they gave the things that they need, running water so they could go ahead and wash the food or fruits or anything that was needed. But I would say that we actually have to collaborate with both entities because we need to be able to find a medium and something that's going to benefit both. But I also think it's important to prioritize our businesses who are paying, their insurance, who are paying to the state board, and really help them both. Because if not, this business is going to continue, or this issue is going to continue to grow, and then we're not going to find a solution for it.
Great answer, Mr. Richard. How do you handle? You got taxpayers calling you up, and somebody left a comment right now. They say, you're letting the homeless do whatever they want. You're already in office, huh? You're letting the homeless, Richard, do whatever they want, but you're sitting here getting the Department of Health department to, mess with this vendor who's selling elotes, selling tamales, and he's walking by a homeless guy blocking the sidewalk. Why is it okay for that homeless guy to set a tent and block the sidewalk, but this guy that's trying to sell food is not okay?
Well, I may be a neophyte in politics, but I'm not in law. And for 42 years, I've had the experience of analyzing legislation and advocating for a remedy. And in this case, I would find the fine balance. You recognize there's an inherent tension between the two parties you just mentioned, and you would have to actually look at the law, look at the ordinances, negotiate. You may have to negotiate, and a lot of times that's what it takes is person-to-person negotiation. Both sides are not wrong. It's not a mutually exclusive scenario. If you can make both sides happy, then I would definitely try. With my experience, I know I can do that, and I could advocate for a middle ground. That's what I would try to do.
Okay, Mr. Martin, since you're actually a councilman there, what is your take on loitering? Because it seems like in the last, 10 years in California, especially last 2 or 3 years, it's become a point where loitering isn't even breaking the law anymore. I think California just passed an ordinance a few months back that makes it okay for prostitutes to walk around, and there's no more loitering laws against that. So what's your take on loitering? Should it be against the law, or should it be a free-for-all like it is now?
Well, that's a tricky question, I suppose. I think the loitering laws in the past have been used really to prosecute or go after some of our brown folks in the community that, in an effort to reduce crime, we've sort of gone after the guys that look like the cholos.
That was me.
Or the
but
maybe that was you.
That was me. But let me tell you something. Believe it or not, I was a cholo out there with a gun. They were right by enforcing those loitering laws. Dang.
Yeah, there you go. I think the challenge, I think what people are really going back to the homeless issue, and I think that's where you're tying it into the loitering issue. We have taken steps here in the city of El Monte. We've used some state money to buy some some motels to turn them into transitional housing. It's the Project Home Key, and I think you're probably familiar with that.
Yes, I am.
So we're remodeling right now the two motels, which will give us a 133 room capacity to house homeless folks from our streets and transition them into permanent housing. So that's one step we're taking. Those motels also have those very important wraparound services that are important to be successful in making that transition, right?
Right.
How do we get people in these hotels? Well, our police officers, they have been running a regular program where they go out and touch the homeless. And so they do this so that they know who's out there. They check on them and they're trying to refer them to places to go. But before we bought those motels, the challenge was always where do we put them? We don't have a place to take them. Now we're working on that. We're going to have that program. But to also help them with that work, we've recently passed a program. Geez, Dr. Morales, remind me of the acronym, the CRT program, Community Resource Team.
Community resource team, yes, where we're
There we go.
embedding. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, they're embedded with the police department, and they will be sent out to calls where we are finding our homeless persons who need that follow-up care, that need that continuous nudging, because it's not that one contact that's going to get them into the shelter at all. These folks have to really want it. But I think people maybe are also concerned about the street vendors. I want to go back to that because that was something that was brought up and has been a continuing problem for us here in the city. At the beginning of the pandemic, we had a lot of vendors out there, and our businesses were concerned because they had to shut down their brick and mortars.
Yeah.
Yet we had these people with tents selling food, right? And so we were trying to be just feeding people and getting people vaccinated and tested. And so when we finally were able to start getting a grip on this, we wanted to be compassionate with those people who were families essentially trying to make a living. We held public forums and met with these vendors. I spoke with some of these people on the street who told me they had worked 20 plus years in the food service industry. This is all they knew how to do. It was their dream to open a restaurant, but they can't do it now. They're just trying to feed a family. So for those folks, we're trying to be compassionate, and we were trying to provide them some assistance to get them to be legal for the street. But now we're at a different phase of the pandemic. Now those folks on the street, they're no longer the families. Those folks have gone back to work as businesses started to open up. What we're seeing now on our streets are professional scofflaws, if you will. These are people who have multiple locations in multiple cities, who have brick and mortar restaurants, who are taking advantage of the fact that the state has previously castrated the local government's ability to go after them. I think we need to rewind back to the Trump administration. And remember, at a time where a lot of our undocumented folks who were selling on the streets of Los Angeles were scared that they would get a ticket for selling on the street. And having that criminal record makes them a target for deportation.
Right.
So the state decriminalized the street vending. Well, in so doing, we now have lost teeth to try to get vendors that are on the street now off the street or into a legal format. Oftentimes we'll go with our public health department and we'll dump food, and not 30 minutes later, those guys have a van around the corner and they pull fresh meat out and fresh salsa and they're ready to go again.
Well, that's
them,
that's a tough juggle that I think all politicians have, but you guys are a little more unique because you guys are in a smaller city than you are in Los Angeles. But that's got to be a real tough juggle, because I see that going on in my city. Listen, I buy from the vendors all the time. I think most of us do. We'll get tacos, raspados, elotes, you name it, we'll get it, right? But what I'm seeing now is more and more is you start seeing one pop up, two pop up, three pop up. And then eventually it becomes like in downtown LA where Central's at. It's cool. I mean, you got 100 on this side, 100 on that side. But do we really want every city to have 100 vendors every block? And, some people will start saying, oh, well, you guys who are mostly Democrats are racist against our own. And it's not. You guys are trying to keep a balance in the city. Now, how are you going to do that as mayor, Maria?
I knew you were coming my way. I knew it. You were going to ask me that question. I'll go back to what Marty was saying. I think we've already been working at this for the last 2 years. And frankly, we were trying to be very compassionate and just knowing the challenges that were occurring during COVID. And so, as Marty mentioned, we're now in a different phase. And we know who these folks are. And it's not folks who actually live in El Monte. Again, we know that they do have their restaurants. And the saddest part is that they're taking business away from folks who are definitely paying their taxes. And so part of the what we've tried to do is to educate, is, before we go into enforcement, is to let these vendors know, hey, we're really trying to provide some sort of support. And going back to the meetings that we had earlier, we got feedback from some of these vendors who were telling us, hey, the city should help us buy, the equipment that we need. The city should help us pay for some of these licenses. Well, we would love to do so many things, but we can't do that because that would be a gift of public funds. So as much as we try to support the vendors, really it's at a point where now they've given us no other choice other than have to go and enforce it. And so, we are at a stage where now, as we quickly transition into, the new council, that's going to have to be a conversation that needs to happen to decide how much does the law, knowing that the state does provide some sort of harbor, how much does the law allow us to make sure that we move these vendors out? Because going back to what Joaquina was saying, the food that's out there is not healthy in terms of, there's fire pits that are open, there's grease that's actually thrown into the gutters. We've seen this, we've documented it. There's videos of these folks actually doing that. And so it's no longer a safe environment for our own community to have these vendors outside because it's a public safety issue now. And so now,
let me get 1 second here. I gotta plug in my computer. and while I plug in my computer, I'm gonna get back to all you guys. I want to start with you, Maria. The question is accountability. As far as the hotels or the motels you guys have purchased for the homeless, should they or should they not be drug tested? Go ahead. I'll let you guys do it while I plug this.
All right. So I think that was a question that you asked me earlier when I was at your show in your location. I wholeheartedly believe in providing the wraparound services. And so we need to make sure that as part of those wraparound services, folks get the support that they need, so that if that is the case and that they need the drug testing to stay in these programs, then that's something that needs to happen. We do have third-party vendors, as I mentioned, or third-party service providers who are essentially making sure that the folks that are coming in are receiving the support that they need. And if it means that they have to be drug tested to stay there, then that's what should happen. Because at the end of the day, this is taxpayer money. And so we need to hold these folks also accountable, because the state and the county are also in partnership with us, and they're going to want to hold us accountable. There's no way that they're going to allow us to keep folks that are not going to be abiding by the rules.
Right. And I think that has something to do with how you said some of the street vendors want you guys to purchase stuff from, because as them, they're looking and they're saying, wait a minute, you guys are putting all these people up in hotels. It's becoming where California, everybody wants something for free, right? But we can get to that a little bit. So now, Joaquina, would you be in support of I don't know if it would be a law, what you would call it, to mandate these hotels that you guys are going to open up for homeless shelters, especially listen, if it's a family with a mom and a kid, I can understand, like, no, you don't need that. But if you know somebody who's been on drugs is coming in there, would you be in support of drug testing them, and after so many tests, they get booted out of the program?
First and foremost, I would say that there's a lot of factors that contribute to a person, unfortunately being homeless. And whether if it's mental health, whether if it's, that they're drug addicts, I think being able to pinpoint the problem, and if they do have a problem and they are addicted to drugs, then being able to solely focus on that. And your question was if I am in support. Definitely, I am in support, because now we're going to know what the problem is and move forward with a solution and address it, most importantly.
Okay, looks like Council Martin wants to jump in here real quick.
I agree with your logic there. If we have people in the program that are suffering from addiction and they're receiving treatment and we're spending money on them to get this treatment, they need to show progress. They need to show commitment, and testing is one way to do that. But what happens when they fail? Where do we send them? We don't have an infrastructure right now. I don't know where to send them right now.
Well, you do
If
what they're
we
doing
had a
right now.
system, if we had a system
They
that
go to
wasn't
the
a
street.
sidewalk,
I mean, it's just like anything else. It's like if your son's doing drugs and you tell your son,
Mhm.
listen, kid, I'm going to bring you back in the house after so many drug tests. That's it. Because after a while, what are you going to do? You're enabling your kid. You're giving him a place to stay. He's getting free EBT. He's getting money from the state. So you're enabling him. That's the way I look at it. And I feel that we can't just simply sit there and say, well, what do we do? Well, they're failing themselves because the first part of recovery is you say you have a problem, you're going to get yourself fixed. And if these guys continue to get babied, I think we're going to continue to have the problem we're having.
I mean, the solution is not just throwing them on the streets. Well, they will eventually end up in jail because our jail systems is already overpopulated.
Right.
We need an alternative. We need to have a place to send people forcibly, if possible,
Absolutely.
to get the treatment that they need. And
Absolutely.
we greatly value our personal freedoms here. I understand that. I'm a veteran, and those are the things we fight for. But there's something wrong with our community, our society, when we will essentially have a court imprison a pop star who's not a threat to any of the public or herself, but because she might not spend her money properly. We'll protect the money, but we won't protect the person on the street who is suffering, who may be a danger to themselves or to others.
Right. Especially to others nowadays. Now let's go to Marisol. Marisol, are you for having mandatory drug tests for people staying in these free hotels?
Yes, I agree. Just like you mentioned, we have to hold them accountable. If they need the help, whatever reason they come in for, there has to be a process to say this is, their issues, have a process and step. And if they do fail the drug test, have another process to help them again. I think we need to find solutions. There's not like one way to solve the issue.
Right.
I think there's many solutions, and we need to figure that out for these people that need our help.
Okay. How about you, Mr. Richard? What are you thinking over here?
Well, the word accountability has been bandied about, and I totally agree. There has to be accountability, but at the same time, we can't just provide any service. There has to be a process. There has to be a vetting of who deserves these services as well.
Right.
And yeah, I get it. We're supposed to be more humane, but at what point do you say this person's failed 100 times? What do we do? We have to do something. And I'm not suggesting or implying anything draconian, but we have to have accountability. I think we have to play it straight with people. Either you test negative, or there's consequences.
Absolutely. Well, I think that the problem is that most politicians are fearful to say, like when I had Maria on here on the podcast, I said, we need to have a plan where we have a place in some part of the desert out here, like in Acton or something, and set up. I'm talking about huge. You're an old military guy. Set up these huge places, but I'm saying huge where this tent is for people who have mental issues. This tent is for people who have heroin problems. This tent is for people who have meth problems. And you have cameras, you have doctors, you have nurses, you have all these trash things. Because right now, what I see in the city is we're chasing them. And when I say them, I'm taking every drug addict, every person with mental issues. We're cleaning up behind them. In 3 weeks, they're back. It's almost like we're cleaning the kids' room for them. We're giving the kids food. We're giving the kids money. No, we need to sit and put the kids in timeout and say, you guys want to loiter? You guys are going to Rehab City. And in Rehab City, you got cameras, you got everything. But it seems like most politicians are just afraid to say anything like that because then they say, no, you're locking them up. No, we're forcing them to get help. And until we get that accountability, I think we're going to continue to spin our wheels. But all you guys seem to favor the accountability part, which is kind of surprising to me, believe it or not.
If I can add
Absolutely.
a little anecdote here, I get an email from a parent from time to time, and I've been communicating with them. They're a resident in the city, and they have a close relative who is facing mental health issues and has been unhoused for several years now. And this is a fairly young individual who is out there. And the significant other, the parent, the family member is absolutely concerned with this individual. And in their email, they constantly say, we need to find a way to mandate and to find a way to force these individuals into particular spaces. And this is coming from someone who has a close family member who has tried everything, has tried to go out there and find them, to go see where they're at, living under the bridge. It's really disheartening to really feel that you want to help someone who's dealing with these mental health issues, and this individual does not want the help. And so for close family members to also go through this is extremely challenging. As we've been canvassing and talking to community members, we have been seeing some of the mental health issues out in the street. We know we have a problem, and it's actually gotten even worse since COVID, since we experienced COVID. And now it's not only adults, but it's also our young teens, our young children who are experiencing mental health issues. So this problem is real. And I would agree with you that, we need to address and really confront this issue. But I think it's different to different. We're very complex folks, that's for sure. And so there isn't just a single remedy for everyone. But I would agree with you is that we do need to be much more intentional in making sure that we're helping folks, because sometimes they don't know how to help themselves.
And I agree with you, but the thing is this: when it comes to problems like this, we don't have the time, the budget, or the people to sit there and individually go to every single person who's having mental health, because the reality of it is this, or at least my opinion, it's not so much mental health, or to the rest of the panel, it's drug addiction. We have the worst drug problem in America's history, and there is no politician that ever talks about it. There's no politician saying, hey, meth is destroying us. Yeah, they'll talk about fentanyl killing. Meth is the number one reason that most of these people and most of these young guys are out there. Why? Because I know people out here in the streets that live real close to me that they're, I don't know, maybe in their early 20s. They look at 35 years old. They're shot out, teeth are missing, talking to themselves, going crazy. And I knew a couple years back when they weren't like that. But the problem is that the meth has gone to these guys so bad. And I think until we actually start making some of these laws, it says, hey, man, that's why I say I'm into like enforcing loitering laws, right? Enforce the loitering laws. You give them tickets. You give them tickets. After so many tickets, you don't go to the county jail. You go to a rehab camp. So I think that's the way you kind of implement these ideas, or at least I'm trying to give you guys these ideas so you guys can do it, because I don't want your guys' job. I'll tell you that right now. But let's get down to crime. We're gonna go with the treasurer. She's making her money. She's good. I don't think she's got a problem. We're gonna go to Joaquina. Joaquina, what is your take on crime? Do you think crime has dropped in the last couple of years? Do you think crime has gone up? And why do you think it has either way?
In our city, I would say that our crime has definitely gone up. One of the things that I recall specifically here in my district was waking up and seeing on the Ring app, hey, my catalytic converter got stolen, my car got broken into, my car was stolen. So all these things that are very real, that are really happening to us here in our community. And this is something that I don't recall seeing, 3-4 years ago. So it is hard times for everybody, and people are looking for alternatives. And if that means robbing our jewelry store here in, as we normally know it, formerly the Valley Mall, we see things like that, and there's video footage of it, and we think to ourselves, it's gotten really bad. So now that we're able to really see the evidence there and see how it impacts us, that we feel unsafe in our own communities, then I would say definitely it has gone up 100%.
And what would you try to push or implement that can help kind of slow this crime wave down?
Well, it's starting with making sure that we have enough of our police officers who are able to respond in a timely manner. As I was canvassing a couple of days ago, one of my neighbors said there was a robbery in progress literally here at my home where they were trying to steal my motorcycle, and it took 4 hours for the police officers to show up. So it's going back to, and I like to take this word from Dr. Morales, going back to the basics, really showing the police department that they're needed out here, and we are able to support them by bringing more officers into our department.
Okay, now Richard, What are you talking about? So the cops get out there and start beating some heads to the ground. How do we fix this?
Well, just by coincidence, that's down my alley. I worked for 35 years with the Office of the Attorney General, and I represented the California Highway Patrol.
Now you
Some of
tell
those
me.
some of those guys did beat people up. Excessive force, that's what it's called. And I could tell you straight out, not 100% of those guys are good. There are, with exceptions, there are exceptions, and some are. I've settled cases, and in fact, I've gotten people reprimanded for doing the wrong thing. So yeah, I'm not one of those that unabashedly says all cops are good. What would I do?
You would fall over. Oh man, I think Richard just fell off. He just he just
Somebody
dropped on
should check on
natural air.
him.
Somebody should check on Richard.
Hold on.
Okay, Martin, what are you
Tengo
doing?
ojo.
You're. Hold on, Richard's back. Richard's back.
Who did
Well,
that to me? Who did that to me?
I thought one of the old highway patrol kicked you, Richard, and knocked you over right now.
No, I banged the table and my phone fell.
All right, go
Anyway,
ahead.
back to I've tried several cases involving civil rights, specifically excessive force. So I know excessive force when I see it. I'll recognize a problem when I see it immediately. To parrot a line from a movie, I got a particular set of skills. However, I know that our El Monte has gone up in property related crimes. What I will do is form immediately a liaison with the community and the law enforcement agencies that we have here, our El Monte police. What I would do is review these cases, and if they're bad people, going back to that word accountability, I would do something about it. Now, again, not trying to be draconian here. We would have to do something. I seen crime go up, in particular with respect to gangs. We have an El Monte gang here coming up in prominence. We have to do something about it, and like Joaquina said, we have to provide our officers with the means, with the tools to do something about it. But we also have to protect our community, just in the event there is that one rogue cop,
Right.
and that's where I come in. I would definitely be keen on that immediately.
Okay, that sounds about right. Marisol, would you be for taking away some money away from, let's say, the hotel projects that they're doing right there for the homeless, and give that more into, like, after school programs, park programs? In other words, diverting some of that money and allocating it more towards kids, because that way kind of helps stop some of the gangs from growing larger.
So first, before we take anything away from any fund, I would first try to increase funding by bringing resources and say, the police department needs this much. What's the estimated project cost of this for after school programs? I would do an evaluation of our current budget and see what are the needs, and say, how could we raise these funds if we need them? And say, if I was to say, let's take some money away from the homeless shelters and put it in the police department, then I would say, next time we have an increase of revenue, let's put some of that money back to that shelter that was taken away. I would definitely say reviewing the budget. I would not want to take any funding away from any department. I would rather focus on bringing more revenue in and increasing the budget for those departments.
Very well said. Councilman Martin, how can we start slowing down the growth of gangs? And that is not just your city, it's every city. It seems like after the pandemic, most of the kids were at home, they were bored, they were on the streets, and therefore started joining more gangs. You see more graffiti everywhere. What kind of programs are you inclined to do, or what you guys are actually doing in the city of El Monte to try to help minimize the gang membership?
I think we need to look at the situation a little bit more holistically. I think a lot of times when we talk about crime and addressing crime, we're so quick to go to, we need to increase the number of police officers on our police force, or we need to, invest more in them. And we are doing that. We do need to do that. I'm not saying that we don't. And to address the quality of the police department, we're big advocates of training. Dr. Morales has injected some very valuable training for de-escalation, and we firmly believe that a well-trained, well-educated police force is less likely to find themselves in these sorts of incidents. And thank God we've have a good police department that has embraced this way of thinking. But we also need to look at the other things, and we talked about the youth programs, our Parks and Rec programs. People think, well, what's the point of having pee wee football or softball for the girls, or what is the value in that? And so often, at times of recession and downturn, we cut those programs, right? Because we think it's more, well, it is important to have police officers on the street, but we forget that the impact of not having these programs affects us in the future,
Absolutely.
right? These kids right now on the street, we need to stay on top of them. We need to, it takes a village to to raise a child, right?
Yes.
And that's how we need to look at this. We need to have valuable programs for them, educational opportunities for them, because when you have idle hands, that's when you start having trouble, right?
For sure. For
So
sure.
so it's a more holistic approach, and we need to identify revenue sources to fund these things. Cannabis is one of them, right? Another thing that we haven't talked about and we haven't really discussed is Measure OT, which is on the ballot right now for the city of El Monte. Now, this is an increase of our transient occupancy tax, or the hotel tax. Currently at 10%, we want to take it up to 14%. And the purpose of that is to use that revenue for public safety. This corridors where we're having problems. You're talking about, the people on the street loitering. These monies can be used to address some of those things,
Now,
right?
who is getting taxed for this exactly? The hotels, you said?
This would it's the hotel occupancy tax that you pay when you go rent a room from any motel anywhere. They charge you a tax, right? So that tax is passed on to the customer, and that's paid off to the city. So the operator of the hotel collects it.
So you guys are gonna take it from 10% to 14%?
That's correct.
And
That's the request from our voters. Yes.
And what's that looking like to pass? Because to me, I'm the kind of guy that always votes no for everything that's taxed. Everything they say, they need help, this needs help. To me, it's like, listen, the cities all got a lot of money. It just seems like they just can't budget it well. So to me, as a guy, well, I don't go and get motels at Monte, but even if I was passing through as a truck driver or something, I'm like, man, I'm not going to go to Monte. I go to the city next over and get a cheaper motel. Don't you think that would hurt your motel business?
No. I mean, we're at 10%, and 14% is still a competitive rate. The problem we have right now, which drives me crazy, is that we are in a retail deficit, right, or a surplus, right? That money is going outside of the city. When we walk and talk to our residents during this campaign, we're asking them, where do you go to eat? Where do you go to shop? When people come in from out of town, where do you take them? And it's not all money. It's our neighboring cities. And that's maddening, because the taxes they're paying in those cities is funding their police departments and their fire departments and their streets. And we need to stop that. So this is about attracting revenue to our cities.
I've also heard it, and I'll take it to Maria. When you were here last time, somebody asked that it seems to be very difficult to get permits in the city of Monte. There's a couple of people that want to open up restaurants, chains out there, and there's nothing there. You guys are almost like North Hollywood. I gotta go to Burbank to go to, like, let's say an Applebee's, or one of the like the chain places. You guys have that same issue, and why do you think that is?
If you, was that a question for me? But
Yeah, that was a question for you.
Okay, yeah, perfect. So I think what we've been seeing, at least before COVID, is that we were picking up some traction. We were having some conversations with some pretty interesting restaurants that were interested in coming into El Monte. And then all of a sudden, because of COVID, then we had some of these challenges because folks just didn't know whether we were going to have the capacity. The way they determine whether we actually can maintain one of those chain restaurants or grocery stores, or, for example, Target, it's all based on median income and purchasing potential. And as Marty was mentioning earlier, there is definitely purchasing potential. But also what distracts folks and investors from coming into the community is if they see some sort of turmoil or some sort of inconsistencies in their council members. And so what we are trying to do through this election is to, again, stabilize this leadership, so then investors will come into the city to say, we know that if we invest $50,000 to get through a permitting process, we know that our projects are going to be finalized, because we know that you have a cohesive council and cohesive leadership. So we know that this investment is going to come through. And so the last 2 years has been, pretty inconsistent and, frankly, toxic. And so oftentimes then, the developers are not going to make their way, because they're not going to want to invest $50,000 into a project that may not even materialize because council can't get their act together. And so we are definitely moving now in the direction where we were pre-COVID, so that we can attract those developers and those businesses, so that we can bring in the restaurants, the Targets, the grocery stores, because we know that this money is leaving. We know that this tax revenue is leaving, and it's incredibly frustrating, for Marty and I, who have been on the council, to see this happening, because we know that we do have purchasing potential here in the city. Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with folks who are saying, we come to the city and we're trying to pull permits, and it just doesn't seem to happen. We know that there is a problem, and we are going to address it, because developers, we don't want you to come to the city and not invest in our city because we can't get you permits. We know we have to fix that problem.
Nice. Now, Viviana, as treasurer, do you see the money that goes in and out as far as any lawsuits with the police department? And if so, have you guys paid out any money in the last couple of years that you've been there?
Yes, there has been money that has been paid out.
Now,
It's public record.
since it's public record, how much money in the last 4 years has the city of Monte paid out in lawsuits?
I don't have an exact amount.
Más o menos, like the Cubanos would say. 100,000, 200,000, 300,000. You're the treasurer. Come on now.
I don't have an exact amount, but
What
there has been lawsuits.
It has been lawsuits. Okay, so now we're gonna go back to Richard. Richard, to me, it's like I want to pull my hair out when I see how much money even the county of Los Angeles pays in lawsuits. And to me, it's like this. I think a lot of times the departments don't care because it doesn't come out of their pocketbook. It's really us taxpayers paying that debt, right?
True.
How can we kind of change that? To me, it's almost like I feel that it should come out of their pension or something, out of the pension of fund of the police department or the sheriff's department, because until that happens, they don't care that they're getting sued. So how can we minimize the amount of lawsuits that I'm sure it's a few $100,000, right? Maybe more, maybe millions that could go back into the programs to the inner youth. How do we minimize that kind of stuff?
Well, first of all, we have to train our officers to act better, to respond better. And there is that threat over their heads about punitive damages. That goes directly to the officer personally, out of their pocket, out of their pension. So that does in fact exist right now. But yes, it's sadly a reality where I'm working currently with the city attorney's office in Glendale. I hate settling. And right now I have a trial coming up, and they want the moon. They want pie in the sky. I'm not going to give it to them. You know why? Because I think of the taxpayer. But at the same time, another lawyer could say, yeah, but you're risking millions perhaps on a verdict. But I know my cases. I don't easily flamboyantly just go into a trial, cavalierly go into trial. I vet it very well. I analyze it very well. But unfortunately, as you just implied, it is a reality. And cities do have to pay in the millions. Sometimes one case is a few million.
Mm-hmm.
And it is sad to see that. And the way to start is from the beginning, and that is training for the officers, awareness that some of these officers shouldn't be in that uniform. And that's how to start.
Would you be willing, and this just popped to my head right now, if I ran let's say a department, I'll say, listen, guys, man, it's almost like when you go to the certain warehouse jobs, we've had 365 days without a injury, and they'll give each other a bonus. Wouldn't it be nice every year for, let's say, the El Monte Police Department, you guys break down, let's say in the last year, you guys spent $300,000 on lawsuits. Well, this year, guys, if you guys get no lawsuits, we're going to get $100,000 and we're going to break it down in your department. Everybody gets that kind of bonus. Do you think that would be a good incentive towards the police?
Well, it'll definitely be a financial incentive. But isn't that our job to do that?
Yeah, Holmes, but sometimes they just don't work that way.
I know.
So I'd rather pay them a bonus, and people will say, oh, yeah, well, at least. And if you look at the numbers, if you're crunching the numbers, if you're spending $100,000 instead of $400,000, you're saving $300,000. I'm getting $300,000 back to the kids.
No, I see your point. And it may work. I don't know if it's going to be something that you can legally implement. But
I'm sure
it's
there's a lawyer out there like you that will sit there and figure out a way to
well,
implement.
we'll figure it out. If you give me that project, I'll figure it out.
All right, so let's go. We're gonna go one more topic, and then we're gonna get out of here. Marisol, I can't afford rent. The rent went from $900 for a one bedroom. Now it's $2,100. What are you guys doing to have regular people be able to afford to live in their own neighborhoods? Because everybody talks about, they're helping, it's equality. But what all I'm seeing in California more and more, it's either you got money or you don't, because we can't afford to pay the rent.
So I agree with you because we are going through a huge market shift in the housing, correct? And I mean, our money has just gone up. I would say for any resident, there are resources out there, whether it's the state or the county having grants for rent relief, and for us in the city council to bring those resources to our city, whether we apply for the grants and say, you have to meet this income to qualify, making residents aware of these programs so they could apply and possibly get these resources. So I think collaborating with the county and the state to find out what resources are out there for those families that need assistance.
Okay. Joaquina, what you got to say about this? How can you help us, take the stress of how much rent is going up every year in the LA County or Southern California?
In my district, District 3, there are a lot of apartment complexes. So I would speak with the renters firsthand. I'm a renter myself. And one of the main topics was that our city does not have rent control. So I'd be willing to bring up that conversation and see and let them know that a lot of these renters, they get their rent raised 2 or 3 times a year. And it's just not fair. They're out here, already struggling. The cost of living has gone up. So there's a lot of contributing factors to that, but still, we need to be able to find solutions and really advocate for them, because they're also scared of retaliation. If they ask for their carpets to be changed, they're scared that something simple as that will have them get a rent increase in the next following month. So really advocating for renters' rights, I would say so as well.
Perfect. Thank you. Now, Councilman Martin, is that something that you and Maria, she gets elected tomorrow as mayor, is that something that you guys can actually implement in your city as a whole, or would that be something the whole people have to vote for as far as rent control?
That's a good question. I don't know 100%. I think that is something that's within our authority. Maybe Richard, you would know on the council to answer that question. As a concept, I'm certainly in favor of the concept, but I want to say that I know that there are lots of moving parts on this, right? There are the people who own properties, and some of them, I'm not talking about the large apartment complexes, but some of the smaller property owners that, are relying on this income into their retirement. There's going to be an impact for them. So we got to make sure that whatever it is that we're doing is fair and equitable to everybody.
Right.
Now, we do have to do something, because I think once we get past December and go into the new year and the eviction moratorium goes away, we're going to have a very serious problem with rents going up. And so it's something we do need to address. And I think it's something this council is going to have to address.
Absolutely.
Going forward.
You got anything to put into that, Maria?
Sorry, I couldn't find my unmute button. Yeah, I would agree with Marty. I mean, I think that these are really challenging conversations that we need to have. I think part of what we've also seen is that we have some absentee landlords here in the city. And so oftentimes, as much as the rents are going up, the housing conditions are dilapidated. We don't have them being responsible for addressing some of the conditions under which some of our families are actually living. And so, we do have to have the conversations about what these renter bill of rights are going to be, what we all think as a council should we do as a city within the parameters, the legal parameters of what we can do and what we can control. These are also private dwellings. And so if there are particular caps that we can place within the legal bounds of what the city can do, I would be in support of that, because at the end of the day, this is a working class community. This is a community whose median income is no more than $47,000 a year. And so for rent to be close to $2,500, $3,000 a month, It's really eating up 80% of their wages. And so how are they feeding their children? How are they, buying them clothing? We see it. And so we do need to have this difficult conversation. We do need to have this difficult conversation on the dais so that we can come to an agreement as to how we're going to address it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Anything to add to that, Richard?
What was that again? I'm sorry.
You got anything to add to that?
Well, that's the scourge of our political climate right now. Inflation, right? That's a big number one on a lot of people's minds. The president doesn't know how to handle it. A lot of politicians don't know how to handle it, and it's just this tension between landlords and those that are renting. And it's if we don't fix that problem, we were going to have a cascading domino effect of the schools getting smaller because they're losing out on people that are leaving this area, and then school enrollments will decrease, will diminish, and then we'll also have an increase perhaps in as you put it, gangs. How do you become? I've thought of this. The way gangs become gang members get into gangs is when they got no other option, and they're bored. And I grew up in South Central LA, and I remember a lot of people didn't have school, or the means to live a decent life, so they went to gangs and almost adopted them as a second family. So that is a very difficult question. I think rent control can be part of it. I think we're going to have to look into maybe drafting covenants with respect to, if you're going to be buying land and buying high rises here, these are the provisions you have to abide by, not just be an absentee landlord and living the high life elsewhere and having dozens of houses and apartments here.
Right.
We have to do something about it.
Right, for sure. That's great. Well, we've come to the end of this discussion. I want to, first of all, before I let each one of you speak, thank you guys so much for coming on. It's not easy, especially in politics. You have all kind of people always throwing stuff at you. But I want to thank you guys for actually doing a great service for your community, because all kind of people, like I said, they'll voice their opinion, they'll talk all kind of crap, but they're not boots on the ground. You guys are out there putting your face out there, putting your character out there for people to criticize you and talk all kind of crap, but yet they have no skin in the game, because a lot of times, unfortunately, those people don't even vote. So first of all, anybody who's watching, if you're from Monte, go out and vote. Whether you vote for all of them, one of them, vote. Let your voices be heard. I'm going to first go off with Viviana, because she's already the treasurer. Let people know why they should vote for you, Viviana. Talk to us.
Hi, everyone. I just want to encourage you to vote. I'm somebody with integrity, accountability. When I oversee our finances, I am somebody you can trust to be objective in overseeing them and speaking up when something doesn't look right. So I humbly ask for your vote and support during this election, and I'm looking forward to serving my community once again.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Joaquina, you're next.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for giving us the opportunity and taking the time to listen to us and learn more about us. And I encourage you all to vote and let your voices be heard. In order to really implement change, it starts with you. And I'm your councilwoman I'm a candidate running for El Monte City Council District 3. And I encourage you to vote, because being able to live in the district, I'll be able to relate to the local issues, identify them, advocate for them, but most importantly, propose and collaborate a plan of action, because we want to see a good change in our city.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Marisol, you're next.
I just want to say thank you to everyone for watching and getting involved in your community. And please, please vote. Like you mentioned, whether you vote for us or you don't, you have to get involved. A lot of us talk, but we have to actually put action. And I'm from El Monte, and I like El Monte. I don't want to leave El Monte, and I just want to give back to my city. And it's going to be a journey. I'm going to learn, and we're here to give back. So again, I'm running for District 6. My name is Marisol Cortez, and thank you for your time.
Perfect. Thank you. Richard, you're next.
Yes, thank you for enduring my presentation here. I've thought about why people should vote for me, and it comes down to this. Aside from the legal skills that I mentioned before, I have now the passion. I've seen our El Monte residents suffer. I've seen their vulnerability. I've seen them so susceptible to the the winds of the economy and gangs and all that. I am so in it now. I mean, I'm emboldened by the fact that I can do something about it. I know I can. I know I can make a difference. And if you give me that opportunity, you have my word. I will make a difference in everything I got in all my arsenal. I will do it. So
Perfect.
please vote for me, District 5, Richard Rojo. Thank you.
There you go. Now, Mr. Councilman Martin, my favorite councilman from El Monte.
Well, thank you for this opportunity to be here and speak with everybody. You know, I'm looking at the comments here, and I see so much pessimism out there, right? You're not going to do this. You're all corrupt. You're all,
Mhm.
you know. But what we're talking about are very complex issues. These are real issues that we have to deal with. And I'm not one who's pessimistic. I focus on these things and I want to move forward. Somebody has to do it. All these people on this panel today are passionate about their community. They want to make a difference. We need you to vote tomorrow and get us in office. But it's not a one-time thing. It's active citizenship. We need you after November 8th to remain active with us, to give us feedback, to learn about the issues as well. And so that you can offer solutions forward, just like our host today is offering solutions at us. Our community needs to do that too. And that's what we are about.
Thank you, Martin. Appreciate that. Now, last but not least, the future mayor of El Monte, Dr. Maria Morales.
Thank you. And again, going back to what Marty was just saying, I think that's the piece that we need to walk away from, and the message that we need to walk away from is that if you want change in your community and you want to really truly see it, you need to get involved. And I'm incredibly proud of these folks who are putting the skin in the game, and they're committed to putting their name out there. Because one thing is to just simply say, oh, well, we want change, we want this to happen, or they're not going to do it. But we don't see other folks stepping up. So if you want change in your community, go out there and vote. Go out and support the folks that you know are going to make the change. And if you see that they're not going to make the change, then you put your name in the hat. You go out there and do it. And that's actually why we're doing it, because we know that we have plans, we have a vision, and that we know that we are going to make a change. And so we're just regular folks like everybody else. We're just trying to give it a shot, and we have the right intentions in our heart. So again, Gil, thank you so much for having us. This has been a fantastic experience. And for me, to bring in some of these folks and mentor them through the process, this is what it's about. This is what leadership is about. It's not just, throwing rocks out there and telling folks, oh, you're this, you're that. No, put your name in there. You do it too. You make sure that you are the change. And if you're not going to do it, then bring folks to the table. Bring the solutions, not just the problems.
There you go, people. I want to thank you guys for watching today. Make sure to vote, vote, vote. Like I said, whether you vote for these individuals, whether you do not, you can't complain if you don't vote. So get out there and vote. Tomorrow is the day to vote. So we'll catch you guys then.